What is the rudest thing that a new neighbor has done to you immediately after you had moved in? 1. We were literally moving in, and our next door neighbor, the Karen of our block, not only started lecturing us on what we could and could not do, but brought over a list she demanded we sign, and claimed the previous owners had given her the right to park in our driveway. We were the first people to own that house. I was hot, tired, and dirty, so right in front of her I called information for the local non-emergency police number. When they answered, I held up the phone so they could hear screeching, then explained we were trying to move in, and she was actively interfering and trespassing. Took 2 cruisers, one to talk to her, one to keep her from interfering. Then we had to show the cops our paperwork. 2. We weren't the new ones, she was. As a background, my husband used to make sure the sidewalk, driveway walkway to our elderly neighbor was cleared of snow. When she died, the house was turned into condos. First new neighbor moved in around mid-November. First snowstorm, my husband shoveled our area only. She came over and started giving him orders on how to start with her shoveling first. How he was the employee so he should do his job. He told her he didn't work for her or the realtor. She went in and called the police. They told her the same thing. My husband did not work for her. She kept saying how the realtor told her he always shoveled for the original owner so he now works for her. She would never even look at us after that. 3. We had just arrived a couple hours prior. I drove our SUV and my husband drove a 26-foot truck with our Honda on a trailer. 850 miles across 4 states to our new home. We were bringing boxes in from the SUV and getting our pets situated when the police arrived. Someone 3 doors down said my husband hit their car with the trailer. We, along with the police, checked the trailer and found no marks or indication of a collision. Then we went down to the car that was supposedly hit. The officer shined his flashlight on it, while the owner of the car pointed out damage. I looked and said, see where the paint is scraped off? That's rust. How long ago did this happen? It certainly wasn't tonight. The officer apologized to us and told the guy he was getting charged with filing a false police report. He moved out a few months later. 4. My family hadn't quite moved in yet, but we were ordered to be stationed at Hill Air Force Base in Utah. We had driven approximately 30 minutes into the state when we stopped for burgers. The burger joint we went to was one of thousands of franchises around the globe. They were known for having served over 1 million burgers, and for their bright, colorful play places. It is at the play place that I, at the age of 8, encountered my first taste of religious exclusion. For those who don't know, Utah is the Mormon homeland. My family was a bit different: Seventh-day Adventist mom and firmly anti-organized religion dad. Both were avid first edition Dungeons and Dragons enthusiasts. Scene 3 blue-eyed blonde girls around my age came into the play place behind me. The oldest one asks, "Are you Mormon?" I didn't know what that was, so I said I'm playing. The girls looked at each other with horrified expressions. "She's not Mormon!" Then the oldest turned to me and said they couldn't play with me, because I'm not Mormon. I still didn't know what Mormon was, so obviously, I asked my dad. He answered my question, but wanted to know why I asked. I told him what happened with the girls. My super awesome dad hugged me, then explained religious persecution to an 8-year-old. It hurt, but I got it. 5. I was newly divorced. He took off with 22-year-old after 23 years of marriage, with 2 teenage children, and bought a small townhouse, as that was all I could afford, as he wasn't paying support. When I heard a knock on my front door. When opened, there was no one there, but a letter had been placed in my mailbox. When I opened the letter, it read that this was a respectful neighborhood and that they did not want or appreciate a divorcee moving in. This was in 2006, and that my onslaught of boyfriends coming and going would not be appreciated. I wasn't even dating as divorce was so new. The letter went on to call me and my children all kinds of derogatory names and suggestions of what would happen to me if I stayed. I tried my best to get along with all neighbors, but between that letter and my next door neighbor from hell, I was glad to leave. 6. My husband and I bought a bungalow in a quiet little town in Florida, about 2 blocks from the beach. After a couple of weeks, our next door neighbor showed up with some cookies and a printed sheet of guidelines for us to follow. This was an older neighborhood, and there was no HOA. She sweetly told me we all like to get along here, and this will be helpful for you, and all of us. Guidelines included suggestions such as, please wear a cover-up when walking to the beach. There are young children and we don't want to be walking around half naked. Please do not host outdoor barbecues after 7 p.m. Please do not mow your lawn before 7 a.m. or after 6 p.m. There were about a dozen such suggestions. I was impressed by the fact that they all began with please, as I appreciate politeness. I looked it over and politely handed it back to her, politely telling her that my husband and I had been adults for some time and knew how to behave. We got occasional complaints from her about TV and music volume, walking to the beach half naked, and screeching out of the driveway early in the morning. Whenever she pointed out our failings, I would stare for a few seconds, then politely walk away. It took a few months, but she finally quit speaking to us. 7. When I bought my home, we were unloading the truck. 6 very tired people, who were just trying to get the job done. The front door is standing open as we carry in boxes. I look up as a woman walked in, with 2 little boys in tow, and says, "Hi, I am your new neighbor. I have a house full of tired, cranky people, and she thinks I have time for a social call." Really? She followed me around for about an hour, telling me she had heard that a disabled person, me, had bought the house, and how her friend used to own it, yada, yada, and I finally turned to her and said, "Please, we have work to get done and I will be glad to sit down over coffee, and get to know you, but today is not the day." She gathered up her 2 little boys, and as she walks out my front door, she says over her shoulder, that she and her husband will be by tomorrow to discuss the rent. I looked at her and said stupidly, huh? She then proceeds to tell me that although I bought my manufactured home through the bank, that she and her husband own the land it was on, and they would come down and discuss rental amount, etc. I looked her straight in the eye and told her that I did not buy the house through a bank. I bought it straight outright for cash, for the house, buildings and the land they are on. There is no bank involved. She gives me a dirty look, and says my husband will have something to say about that. Turns around and walks out the door. The following day, I saw her husband coming home from work, so I stepped outside and asked him if he wanted to speak to me as his wife said. He looked at me, kind of embarrassed, put his head down, and said, "Yeah, I am sorry about that. But when she heard a disabled lady bought the house, she figured she could scam you for some cash. I am really sorry, but she just does these things grrrrrr. She figured she could rip off a disabled person and get away with it? Nope." Needless to say, I rejected all offers of friendship until she sold her house and moved. Bye-bye.